Here are 3 true scary stories from Reddit. The links to the stories are in the description below. Enjoy. Number 1. When I was in grade school, my family lived in a house that sat directly across from the school I attended. However, there was about a half-mile of wooded area between them. I was allowed to walk to and from school because it was so straightforward. My mother informed me that she and her siblings walked through the woods to school when they were younger, so it felt like a natural and safe thing for her to allow me, her daughter, to walk to school by myself. I love the excitement of being able to walk to school all on my own, and I felt pretty at home in the woods, as I had been raised around them. The walk was pretty direct with very little issues, aside from a small but wide creek that I had to cross. The creek itself was no problem. It was the fact that on each side there was a steep bank that had to be scaled. It wasn't too terrible unless it had been raining. On this particular day, it had rained the night before, so my steps, which were normally loud, were fairly silent. This may have saved my life. It at least saved me from something terrible. When I reached the creek, I was in my own little world. I was thinking about a science project we had to do at school and whether or not I was fully prepared for my part in it. My part of the project was to explain a supernova, and I wasn't feeling very ready to make a speech in front of the whole class. Anyway, I reached the edge and dropped down the first bank with a slightly wet thud. I crossed over the water and began looking for roots sticking out to grab a hold of and pull myself up with. Before I could climb up the other side, I heard a noise, like people talking. I stopped and waited to see if I heard it again, and I did. I heard a couple of boys talking, getting closer to me. I flattened myself up against the bank and listened for a minute. I don't know why, but something just told me to stay quiet, that there was something wrong. The boys walked all the way up to the edge of the creek bank I was at, but they didn't jump down. If they had, they would have seen me in a flash. As luck would have it, there was an overhang that I was able to hide under. I listened as the boys talked. "Yeah, she comes through here all the time. She should be coming around in just a minute." My heart sank. I was the only person that walked this trail to and from school, and they were in my direct path. That isn't to say that no one else was ever in the woods, but of all the times I used this trail, I had never seen another living soul. To get to the woods from my house, I had to cross the road and walk through a small flat area with no trees. To get there from the school side, I had to walk through the school's football field. Anyone from either side could have watched me going in and out of the woods daily. I stood plastered against the wall of mud, waiting for them to catch me. They walked around a little bit, smoked a couple of cigarettes, and started getting frustrated. "Where the hell is she, man? You said she would be here, so where is she?" "Maybe she isn't coming to school today. Anyway, we gotta go. We're gonna miss our bus." This told me 2 things. 1, they were obviously in high school since they caught their bus in front of the elementary school, so they were much older than me. And 2, they had some seriously bad intentions towards me. I heard them leaving, but I didn't dare move. I waited a good 30 minutes or so before I darted out of the creek bed and ran home. I will never know exactly what those 2 boys had planned to do to me that day, and I'm not sure I want to. So, creepy high schoolers waiting in the woods for a little girl. Let's not meet. Number 2. I didn't want to post this because it reminded me of the fear of when this happened, but I just needed to get it out there. I was 10 at the time of this. I was with my 15-year-old brother and his 2 friends in the woods. We were feeling like some time in the woods, even just a small getaway from everything in life, would help us clear our minds. After an hour or so, we wanted a rest. I was carrying all the stuff, so I pulled out the sodas, the water, as well as small snacks. Gummy bears, crackers, cookies, etc. We sat around eating the snacks and having our drinks when we heard something off in the distance. We were curious to see what it was, so we headed towards the noise. We met a man with a hunting rifle wearing a black hat and a red coat. My brother was the first to talk, saying something along the lines of, "Can we help you?" The man said he was hunting and thought we were animals. He was trying to be quiet as not to frighten any away, but we let out a small giggle. We said sorry, but we had to go. The man said, "Wait, I have more guns in my house about a 30-minute walk from here, and I could teach you boys to hunt." My brother said that we didn't have licenses and that we had to get back home. I actually wanted to go with the man since I had an interest in weapons, but I went with my brother. We got back to the house and my brother and his friends cleaned up first while I sat and watched TV. We had all finished taking our showers when we heard a noise from outside. I went to investigate, and it was my mom. I was relieved thinking it was the man. We told my mom about our encounter and she said that we did good not to go with him. Then she smiled and said, "I taught you well." That's when she said we all could go out for ice cream, but for once in my life, I wasn't feeling it, so I stayed home. After they'd left, my mom called the house phone and said they'd be back in 2 hours. She wanted to get some shopping done, and I was fine with that. I went into my brother's room to play on his laptop while on the phone with some friends. It was around 6 p.m. when my dog started barking. My mom and brother weren't due home for another hour. I asked what's wrong, and the dog began barking louder. That's when I heard the front doorknob jiggle. We keep the doorknob unlocked and leave the top bolt locked because you needed a code for you to enter. So when the code wasn't entered, I knew that it wasn't them and started to cry. I quickly hid under my brother's bed, turning off every light and putting my phone on vibrate. I had my dog with me, a Chihuahua, and was trying to keep him quiet. He did after I covered his mouth and then pushed my hand away with his paw. That's when I heard a loud bang, and my front door flew open. There were 2 guys and one of them said, "Are you sure you don't want to come to my house for guns?" And my heart instantly stopped beating when I heard that. I knew then it was the hunter from the woods. I pulled out my phone and texted my mom to call 911 and send the cops to our house. I put the phone back in my pocket. It kept on buzzing, so I pulled it back out and texted her that people are in the house. I told her one was the guy from the woods that we said we didn't follow. She replied that the cops were already on their way. It had only been about 5 minutes, but felt like forever. Now, they were in the room with me. I was still hidden with my dog, who kept trying to get out, but thankfully wasn't barking or growling. After a couple more minutes, I heard sirens and one of them said, "Oh shit, the cops." The cops came in and nabbed them. Our neighbor walked over and said she had also called the cops, and that's when my mom and brother arrived. I told the cops everything that happened that day, and so did my brother. The guys were arrested for breaking and entering. I haven't been in the woods since that incident, and we will be notified when the guy's released from prison. I don't know how he found my house or if he followed us, but guy from the woods who almost caught me. Let's not meet again. Number 3. Long-time reader, first-time poster. I've been debating sharing this story for some time, mostly because it doesn't have a lot of clarity. Something definitely happened. What it exactly was, I don't know. So let me set the stage. At the time I was living in Traverse City, Michigan. Beautiful landscape for those wondering. Huge glacier-carved hills and Lake Michigan at your back. I rented a little townhouse with a longtime friend a little ways outside the city. I had just gotten a hold of my old bicycle, which I had shipped up from my old hometown. I was raring to start riding around, and that's how this all got started. It was my day off, and I decided to save gas and ride my bike into town. I geared up, checked my tires, and rode off. I had been big on riding my bike once upon a time, and it all came back like, well, riding a bike. What I didn't notice, however, was how quickly I was moving. If I'd been paying attention, I would have realized the constant downward slope I was on, and how riding back up it would likely pose a difficulty for my slightly atrophied from winter muscles. But none of that mattered at the time. I made it into town, did some shopping, met up with my roommate for dinner, and generally had a good time. Then I noticed the sun was setting, so I bid my adieus, hopped on my bike, and pedaled off into the sunset. At first I did alright, but that aforementioned incline wore me down. By the time I reached the last leg of my journey, it was pitch black and I was walking with my bike. While on the road, I was faced with a choice. To my left was the regular road, which was better lit, but also a longer trek to get to the townhouse row I occupied. To my right was my more regular route, to and from town. I drove on it every day and had used it to come into town that very day, in fact. It was heavily wooded and unlit, but a shorter route, albeit with a steeper hill. I figured since I was already walking, I might as well just take the shorter, familiar path. So I turned on my bike's headlamp and headed to the right, through the woods. All was well for a bit. I trudged along and cursed myself for being so stupid and overconfident with my bike. Then I heard it. Footsteps off to my right. I stood still and they stopped abruptly. There in the blackness, I debated what it might be. But as a veteran of the woods, I hoped it was just local wildlife and continued onward. The footsteps started up again. Then they stopped when I stopped. I started and stopped once more to be sure I wasn't hearing things. This last time, the steps continued on for a solid 10 seconds after I had stopped, making me sure something or someone was out there. I still didn't know what, though I logically leaned towards human as the gait sounded bipedal and more precise than a quadruped. With this in mind, I weighed my options. If I dropped the bike and ran towards home, it would be way far too easy to catch me. The same was true even if I ran back towards town. I was not in any way prepared for a chase, and I didn't want to initiate one. My mind strayed to the utility knife I always carry on me, but I shoved that thought aside. I have enough martial arts training to know the knife was a bad idea, and I was more comfortable taking whoever or whatever was out there barehanded, rather than escalating things with a blade. Instead, I called my roommate, who was still in town, gave her my location and told her what was happening. She told me she'd be right there in 10 minutes. I hung up and started walking again. The footsteps started up too, this time faster and out of sync with mine. And that's when I got mad. I have a weird thing where fear makes me angry and hostile, and being stalked through the woods had officially punched my buttons from terrified to murderous. So I turned to the woods and roared with a voice I didn't know I had.
How about you come out and face me, you piece of shit? I'll rip your stomach open and wear your intestines for a necklace!
For the life of me, I didn't know where I got the guts or the words for that. It might have well been a bad movie, but the woods were rather abruptly quiet, and nothing came at me. I stayed still, staring hard, ready to beat the shit out of anything that moved. Then my roomie came on scene, her headlights almost blinding me as she turned the curve to where I was. I tossed my bike in her car and we hauled ass home. I collapsed once I got home, vomiting from pure nerves, and finally fell asleep around 3 a.m. And that's my story. I'm not sure of much, I will grant you. Was it a person? An animal? I feel compelled to lean towards the former, if for no better reason than because it sounded like a person walking, and what animal would be so precise in its stalking and winding me up? But who knows? Maybe I just scared the shit out of some poor porcupine. Regardless, I'd rather not encounter it again. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If not, I suggest going on a long walk, possibly meditating, maybe even doing some yoga. And if later you still feel the same way, I still thank you for listening. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.